What's going on, guys? It's Cimo. Now today I wanted to bring to you a card discussion on Denko Sekka, aka Denko Rekka, aka Denko, whatever the fuck you want to call her. Denko Sekka is a really fucking good card. It's a light level 4 thunder type monster with 1700 attack and 1000 defense, and the effect reads that it cannot be special summoned, but as long as you control no set spell or trap cards, neither player can set spell or trap cards, nor activate spell or trap cards that are already set on the field. Now, why is this a good card? Well, it should be pretty obvious that any card that basically says I can cold wave you is really fucking powerful, and as we've seen in the past, ever since Shaddoll format, when this card came out in Next Challengers, Denko Sekka has been putting in a lot of work. Ever back since Shaddolls, you know, people would just drop the Denko and pretty much OTK you if they had the correct hand to do so, and it seemed in and out of formats every now and then. It was really back in its prime with Shaddoll format, when Super Poly was at 3 and all these different things, and then it kind of went off to the side a little bit, showed up again in Necros format, and now here we are again showing up because of one deck in particular, and that's Paleozoics. The second you drop Denko Sekka down against a Paleozoic player, it pretty much shuts off all of their back row, and since Paleozoics rely on being able to chain their back row to summon their Paleozoics out of the grave, or do anything of the sort, they're pretty much completely fucking screwed, and that's what makes Denko Sekka such a prime choice against the deck in general. But Denko Sekka isn't just good against Paleozoics at the current moment, it's really good against pretty much any sort of quick play spell or trap card, even counter traps for that matter. I mean, this card can stop Book of Eclipse, this card can stop Solemn Strike, it can stop Vanity's Emptiness, Floodgate Trap Hole, Bottomless Trap Hole, Dimensional Barrier. There are so many powerful cards currently in the meta that Denko Sekka can pretty much entirely shut down. The only things you have to look out for are cards like Solemn Warning, which are still kind of being played, but more people are playing Strike than Warning anyway, and Chaos Trap Hole, which you don't see too much Chaos Trap Hole. If you do, it's probably going to be in the side deck, but for those two being the only solid outs to counter Denko Sekka outright on summon, chances are if you drop a Denko Sekka on your opponent, it's going to stick. Now, there's a lot of cool combos that you can do with Denko Sekka. One in particular is if you already have an anti-spell fragrance face up on the field and you drop Denko Sekka, neither player can now use nor activate spell or trap cards, because since anti-spell fragrance forces you to set a spell before you can activate it, and Denko Sekka doesn't allow you to set, it pretty much creates a game state where you can't play spell cards at all. Same goes for traps, because you already need to set those in the first place. So that's a really cool combo altogether. Another really cool thing, and a lot of people overlook this about Denko Sekka, is that if you already have face-down cards on the field in your back row, you can summon Denko Sekka, and if you activate that back row card, let's say it's like a Mystical Space Typhoon or a Twin Twister, the second you have no set spell or trap cards, Denko Sekka's continuous effect immediately kicks in, and your opponent can't use anything in their back row in response, since Denko Sekka is now live. So you could summon Denko Sekka, flip up your Twin Twisters, and then pop their 2 back row or their 2 Pendulum Scales, and your opponent now no longer has the option to chain those 2 back row in response, because Denko Sekka is now live, and they're pretty much shit out of luck. So, a lot of cool things you can do with Denko Sekka. It's kind of like Domain of the Monarch, where people forget that if you control a Tribute Summon monster, you can still use your extra deck, but a lot of people just assume that if they see Domain and a Tribute Summon monster, they're pretty much shut out. Denko Sekka kind of has the same psychology behind it, and a lot of more experienced players know this and can use it to their advantage, and pretty much manipulate the game state like that. But what are the weaknesses of Denko Sekka? Probably the biggest weakness of all with Denko Sekka. I mean, it's got great typing, it's got great stats, it's got a very powerful effect, but the worst part about this card is that it eats your normal summon, and because it can't be special summoned, you do need to normal summon it, for it to be an effective tool. And why that's a downside is because there's not a lot of decks that can afford to relinquish their normal summon to something like Denko Sekka. Now, if you have decks that have like pendulum summoning mechanics where they can just pretty much shit out an entire board of monsters while Denko Sekka is protecting them, then that's the kind of deck you're going to want to run Denko Sekka in. Something like Metal Foes. Blue Eyes can even play it because Blue Eyes is a very heavy special summoning deck. But things more along the lines that require much more heavily normal summons, like ABCs for instance, unless you've got something like Seraphonite to give you an extra normal summon, there are decks that do suffer at the fact that you can't use Denko Sekka to its full effect. Because you have to use that normal summon, you're giving up something that your deck does much better with its normal summon, in the instance of ABC, something like a gold or silver gadget, and that really sets you back. So Denko Sekka isn't for every deck. And the other thing about Denko Sekka as well is that it does tend to fall in and out between formats depending on what cards are available. You know, right now Denko Sekka is just seeing a lot of play because paleozoics are a thing and it's a very, very heavy back row reliant deck. But, you know, once paleozoics fall out of the meta again, you might see Denko Sekka fall away with it, because it's not really worth running Denko Sekka just to stop a card like one Solemn Strike or one Vanity's Emptiness. You've got cards like Twin Twister and other things like that that can be equally as effective without having to eat your normal summon as well. And the other thing that's a downside about Denko Sekka is that it can be easily outed as well, especially with Paleozoic since they run the Frog engine. It's really easy for them to go into something like number 45 or really anything that can just attack over the Denko Sekka, and since you can't use any back row while Denko Sekka is live, that kind of puts you in an awkward spot. So, unless you got something like Honest to drop on them and pretty much completely outplay them, then more power to you. But that's going to be it, guys, for the video. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think about Denko Sekka. This has been one of my favorite cards since Shaddoll format. Beautiful artwork, incredible effect, and it's going to be a card that's going to be around for a very long time. The card is currently running close to $20, if not more. I wouldn't say it's worth that, so if you've got yours, go ahead and sell them. It's a good solid $5 to $10 card at the most, though. So thank you guys so much for watching the video. Be sure to like the video as always. Subscribe to the channel for more amazing Yu-Gi-Oh! Content, and be sure to back me on Patreon as well, because just by pledging $1 a month, you're investing in my ability to bring you amazing Yu-Gi-Oh! Content. So thank you guys so much again. We'll see you next time.